I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
Siege, how much sleep did you get last night?
I got a few hours. Luckily, the GMs were accommodating, and it was a busy early evening, but it wasn't one of those nights where the trades went right up till midnight. So I'm refreshed and ready to go.
I almost didn't sleep because I kept checking Twitter thinking, oh no, well, Ben Chiarot got moved. Calle Jarnkrok got moved. Who else is going to get moved? I don't want to miss any of these trades. I don't want to show up in time for us to do this podcast and not know and not be up on everything. That's the gig. That's what we're supposed to do.
Well, if history is a judge, I would suggest you Sunday night, you might not want to plan an early bedtime because the Sundays tend to have deals that go to 10 or 11 or midnight, in anticipation for Monday. So I think you'll still have a chance for a later night this week.
Well, at the very least, thank God we're doing a Sunday podcast where at the very least we'll be able to take on whatever trades take place between, I guess, at this point now and through to Sunday, I guess. At the very least, we'll be on top of more stuff through the weekend. And then, of course, on Monday will be the trade deadline. So we'll be back on Tuesday with an episode then and not on the Monday because one of us has to spend hours breaking trades.
Yeah, I appreciate your optimistic tone there, Julian, but it feels to me like we're just going to be horribly out of date with all of this stuff. I mean, everything we put into these pods is going to be dated almost by the time you listen to it. I don't see any way around it.
Siege, on another show that I do, Hockey Inside Out, I literally started the episode by saying, by the time you listen to this podcast, Ben Chiarot will have already been traded. Because on that particular podcast, people are notorious for saying how we're late on stuff when we record. So I tried to go ahead of it and said, okay, Ben Chiarot will be traded by the time this podcast will happen. So this will already be dated. And lo and behold, I was right.
There you go. Down 1 cup of high coffee already this morning. So let's get at it.
Oh, yes. When I finish this, I will have my coffee. Let's talk about Ben Chiarot, who did, in fact, get moved from the Montreal Canadiens to the Florida Panthers. I have the full trade in front of me. He goes to Florida in exchange for a first rounder in 2023. That's next year's draft. A fourth rounder in 2022. That's this year's draft. And Ty Smilanic, who was a third-round pick of the Panthers in 2020. The Canadiens will also retain 50% of Ben Chiarot's salary. CJ, what was your immediate reaction when you saw the deal take place?
What a haul. What a haul. I mean, of course, this is what Montreal's been talking about, setting the price with teams that were interested in Chiarot. And they're, over the course of the season, there was a ton of teams that showed some interest in Ben Chiarot. But I don't know that anyone necessarily expect them to actually meet that price, and it ended up happening. And from my understanding of things on Wednesday, it sounds like 2 teams, Florida obviously being one of them, really up their offers, really up their urgency to try to get this deal done. Haven't confirmed who the other is. I think it's possibly Boston, but that's not 100% confirmed. But we'll leave the Bruins aside for a minute because I think as we look ahead, they'll certainly be looking for left shot D candidates as this market continues to develop. And, Montreal, I think, did excellent in this trade. Getting a 2023 first rounder was something they wanted. They of course, already have a few first rounders for the upcoming draft. 2023 is also considered to be a bit of a stronger draft, so it might end up being a better pick that way. And then they also got a prospect, which is what they did in the Tyler Toffoli deal, if you remember, something that they identified as wanting to do with the Flames, because while Montreal is sort of at the tip here of what we might call a rebuild, retool, I don't think they only want draft picks. I mean, they want prospects that are going to be ready to enter the lineup sooner. I think they want to build a team around Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. Make sure that those guys have enough teammates to have a strong team in a couple of years' time. And so this isn't a full teardown, and you need some current day players. And then, of course, the fourth is really just in there because of the money they're holding back on Chiarot. So, I think it's a huge deal for Montreal. No lottery protection. Of course, we expect the Panthers to be a really good team next year. They're second overall as we're recording this season. But, strange things have happened. They had the Duchesne trade with Ottawa. That kind of came into play. San Jose trade with Ottawa and Carlson going the other way, where a pick without protection ended up being pretty high. And so I think all in all, a tidy bit of business for the Canadiens.
Do you anticipate that they're? It's kind of weird to say they might be done, but they do have other pieces that could be available for trade, like Arturi Lehkonen, for example. People have thrown out Jeff Petry's name. Do you get the sense the Canadiens are still going to be very active leading up to Monday?
Sure, they're not done. I think what they have, though, with some of those players is they basically established a threshold where, if you want Arturi Lehkonen, it's going to cost a first-round pick. And, just given how few of those are floating around on this year's trade market, I'm not that confident they'll be able to get it. But sure, they would move him for a certain price. I think they're feeling that way with a number of their guys. Even someone say like Brett Kulak. I'm not sure they're just going to toss him if someone offers a fifth rounder just to do it. I think it's about getting certain assets for the players that they have. And so, it's still going to be a very busy few days, I would think, for Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon as they sort of navigate this market and take calls. But I don't think that they're of the mind that they have to trade certain players. And so they're not going to give anyone away for free. And so if it ends up being a buyer's market, as I suspect it might, maybe the Canadiens don't end up making more moves.
What do you think about Ben Chiarot, the player? There seems to be this debate about the fact that his underlying metrics, they're not that good. He does take a lot of bad penalties. He's a guy that I think a lot of older school people would like and more younger, analytically focused people do not like. But in talking to players like Brendan Gallagher and Paul Byron in the last few days, they've not only brought up how good of a person that he is or a good player that he is, Paul Byron in particular emphasized that he's a guy you win in the playoffs with. So I'm curious to know what your stance is on Ben Chiarot as a player.
Well, I think one thing, that was pointed out to me is he had really, really difficult usage in Montreal. And so when you're looking at some of those underlying numbers, especially for the season, and I saw one of those cards that goes around, had him at like 0% WAR or something, makes him look like the worst player in the league. I think sometimes the context of how a player's used is important. And, going down to Florida, obviously he's not cracking the top pair with Ekblad on it. I think that he'll be used, slotted a little bit more properly in the Panthers lineup. And there's no question in my mind that with the way the game is played in the playoffs, bigger, heavier defensemen have a place in that part of the game. It can't all be puck movers. I can't think of any team that's won a Stanley Cup playing that way. You need to be able to do different things. And so I think there's tons of place for him in the game. I understand where the debate comes from. We're all loving these player cards and certainly the cards sort of suggests one thing about Ben Chiarot. I think that there's somewhere in the middle here in terms of understanding his value. And there's a reason why that many teams were interested. Like, I think it's like 10 teams at one point in time were interested in Ben Chiarot. It might even be a little higher than that. And, those teams recognize that there's value to what he brings for a playoff run. And so, I think sometimes the takes get a little extreme in both directions. Certainly he's not someone who's going to help the possession game too much, but he's going to punish opponents. And over potentially 7 games against the same team over and over and over again over a 2-week stretch, there's value to what he brings.
Okay. So the Florida Panthers themselves, because they get Chiarot, they flipped away Frank Vatrano. They seem to be in on Claude Giroux. And we'll get to Claude Giroux a little later in the show. Are the Panthers, even though they don't have a first round pick, and I don't think they have a second round pick for this upcoming draft, what do you think about them ahead of the deadline? Like, not just how active do you think they'll be, but like, what's your read on the Panthers right now?
Well, let's look at their Wednesday, right? They traded Frank Vatrano, who has over a $2 million salary, to New York without retaining any of it. And yet they trade for, Ben Chiarot retained at 50%. So they only brought 1.75 back. They opened net cap space with those series of moves. That tells you where their mindset's at. They're looking to add yet more pieces before the deadline. It's been such a great season there for them. I can understand the impulse, the desire to go and the Atlantic Division's a murderer's row. They're going to have to get through Tampa and Boston, maybe Toronto. It's not going to be an easy path for them, but that's why you bulk up the team. They already have such a deep team with forwards already. I think that's probably where you're going to see the next addition come. There's good reason to link Claude Giroux to the Panthers. It's not to say he's going to go there, but they have bona fide interest. They have an ability to make that trade happen, I believe. From a cap perspective, they might not have the picks you mentioned, but they do have a pretty good prospect in Owen Tippett, recently the AHL Player of the Week, who's been playing for their farm team in Charlotte. They have other things to dangle, I guess, to make these kind of trades happen. And so, I think that they are the definition of all in as you can be in a hard cap world. Much like Colorado, we saw them make a couple moves this week, and I still think that they're going to look to take a big swing. And lo and behold, they might be after the same player, Claude Giroux, as we move towards the weekend here. And so, we're talking about teams at the absolute top of the NHL standings, teams that have set the Stanley Cup reasonably, I think, as their goal. And now that it's time for the front offices to give the players the best chance to go for it.
By the way, I don't think we got to mention this at all this week, but yes, the Colorado Avalanche, very active as well. They got Josh Manson earlier this week from the Anaheim Ducks. Do you have any quick thoughts on that?
Well, look at their blue line. I mean, they got like 10 NHL blue liners. That's for a playoff run. I know they have some injuries back there right now. Samuel Girard's been out. Bowen Byram's been out, but they've got tons of quality depth, not just depth. Like every team has depth. They've got quality depth. They got bigger with Manson, a little nastier, which I think is needed for the playoffs. They also made a sort of under the radar move, the Nico Sturm for Tyson Jost deal. Nico Sturm's 6'3", going to be a fourth liner, maybe third liner for them, probably fourth, and just beefs up their bottom six. I think that they're building a team with a specific identity in mind to be ready for the playoffs. Obviously, a high at the top end of the roster, but again, you need, I think, a little bit of balance. We've yet to see a team win by going all in one kind of direction, whether it's all nastiness and grit and all those words that get thrown around, or whether it's all skill and elite players. I think you're looking for a balance. And the interesting part of what Joe Sakic did is he also created cap space net with his series of moves. And so, both teams are set up to be big players through the weekend and into Monday's deadline. And I think that's how it should be. I mean, really, we're doing a reverse order of standings here in terms of figuring out who the buyers and sellers are. And the buyers are all pretty much located right at the top of the NHL standings.
Exactly. And hey, look, that's fun for us. I say us. I was thinking about this yesterday, right? Because I know on Nature Provocateur, they had Frank Saravalli on, who was talking about the anxiety that comes with, trying to prepare for the deadline. The people get really anxious, the players themselves who, are either waiting to be shipped or thinking of the prospect of their teammates being shipped, and management and the teams and the organizations all worrying about that. And then there are the trade breakers like yourself who are, frantically trying to prepare and do everything you can to ensure that you're on top of things. You can break stories and just get through to that deadline day and get past it. And then there are like the other journalists who have to write about the trades that are going on, the editors like myself who have to edit some of those stories, or I guess in my case too, because I'm technically kind of doing double duty with Arpon Basu away from the desk for a while. So pretty much the only people who really get to enjoy it are like fans. Everyone else is just kind of like anxious. Well,
let's be honest. I mean, I still enjoy this. I know I've made some jokes.
Yes, that's fair.
I actually find the anxiety or the sort of dread about it worse like 3 weeks out. Like, I don't like it when we're just talking endlessly about the same players, but reasonably they're going to be traded within a 72 to 48 hour window before the deadline. Like, it feels like you're just moving around the same topics. I actually like it now. I mean, now things are happening. It's pretty clear. It was clear to me yesterday, even before those deals went down, the market really started to move on Wednesday. There's lots more conversation happening around the league. Like this to me actually is when it's fun. Like I like being in it. I hate when I'm sitting at a distance talking about the thing that I'm going to be in eventually. That's when I find it most difficult. I recognize for the players. I mean, that's a real thing, because there's no way for the teams to manage this, right? There's so many rumors everywhere. Some of them real, some of them half real, some of them total fabrications. So many players' names get mentioned or appear on trade lists or what have you. And the teams themselves can't even the teams can't really manage that, right? Like in a normal situation where there's not constant trade rumors, let's say a player's name pops in a trade rumor, I think the GM can phone his agent or even have the player come in and say, hey, look, this is what's this, kind of give them the lowdown. I don't think there's an opportunity to do that when you get down to this crunch time now as much. And so it is an anxious time for guys. And their families, especially, probably even more so families and friends that have more time to be searching around Twitter and listening to podcasts or what have you, looking for all these little nuggets of information. But, ultimately, I think it's good for the sport. I think it's good for business. And, I don't want to get anyone mixed up. Like I love it right now. Like, it's funny. Someone on Wednesday night that works for a team was sort of poking me, right? All this information's coming out. And I was like, I know, like, I'm taking years off my life to try to get 25-second head start on my colleagues on certain bits of info. Like it's kind of absurd and illogical, but it's a hell of a lot of fun too.
I just hope the gray hairs in your beard don't multiply by Monday.
Well, this is the result of 8 or 9 deadlines I did at Sportsnet, and this is my first one at TSN. But I'm almost a decade deep on these deadline shows, so I've earned these grays.
Yes, very much so. Another player who got traded on Wednesday, Calle Jarnkrok, or as Marshawn Lynch once referred to him as Boy Calle. Remember that when he got drafted at the expansion draft?
I'll never forget that. It's actually for me, it's the memory I have most of the expansion draft, just in terms of like things that came out of it.
Yeah, Marshawn Lynch, like just an underrated, funny human being, and not just like someone who tries to be funny. He's just a naturally funny human being. So I love the fact that he was able to do that. And I'm sure the Calgary Flames love the fact that they have Calle Jarnkrok in their steed, or at least in their stable, I guess. I don't really ride horses, so maybe I got the analogy wrong. All right, whatever. The trade, he goes to Calgary for a 2nd round pick in this year's draft, a 3rd rounder next year, and a 7th round pick in 2024. Brad Treliving obviously likes the deal, feels his team gets better, also gets to play with his cousin Elias Lindholm, and Jakob Markstrom is one of his best friends. So pretty good situation for him, I would think.
Let's start with the hockey part. I mean, it's pretty clear the Flames love him. That's a huge price to pay for a rental. And a player that brings, he brings a certain something to your team. Basically, he'll be the 3rd line center on the Flames. But, they're not bringing him in to be a scoring star or to put up big numbers. It's to be a pain in the ass, be part of a 3rd line with an identity that Daryl Sutter will want to have. But he fits such a specific need. And there was a lot of teams in on Jarnkrok. I mean, I think this deal really went down initially on Tuesday night. Ron Francis held tight and, ends up getting a 2nd and a 3rd for the player, essentially, in the 7th round pick, because they held half of his salary back, $1 million a cap hit. I think the Flames are a wagon, and I like what Brad Treliving's done. I like getting to Foley early. Most GMs, I think, in their dream state, would love to get their deals done a month before the deadline. It's so hard sometimes to have a motivated buyer and seller at that same period of time. I just think it gives you a lot longer for the coach to get comfortable with the lineup, maybe to shift lines around and things to find the optimal fit, because it's one thing to draw it up on the board and be like, okay, Toffoli fits perfectly with these 2 players, but then sometimes when you see it on the ice, it doesn't go. And, Calgary's barely lost games in the last 2 months. I mean, they're just rolling through the league right now. If they had one small hole, and we're now, nitpicking, maybe it was 3rd line center. They had Adam Ruzicka there, who they sent down to their farm team as part of this move to get Jarnkrok in. Now that they're deep everywhere, probably done, might kick around for a bit of depth still before the deadline, but I love the team. I love the aggressiveness in identifying the exact guys they wanted. That was a factor in the Toffoli deal. Like they specifically identified it as a player they wanted and went and got him. Maybe paid a little higher price, but again, there's something to be said for doing your business early and not having to make rush decisions, at 2:55 in Eastern time in the afternoon on Monday. So, the Flames did well here. And then there's really that cute angle. Havla, Sweden is not a big place. I think I put on Twitter 75,000. Someone got in my mentions and said he's from there and it's 100,000. I mean, point taken, but it's a smaller place. And so Elias Lindholm's brother is a trainer. He actually trains Elias and Jakob Markstrom and Calle Jarnkrok every summer. They spend their time together there. 3 guys from the same hometown. Turns out that the Lindholms and Jarnkrok are cousins, and now 3 for the Calgary Flames trying to win a Stanley Cup. I mean, imagine if the Flames win a cup, the party that you could have in Havla, Sweden. I mean, it'll just take residency there for a week. Like, what a story that would be. I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I love these little things that come up because, yeah, there's a few other NHL players from that particular part of Sweden, but for all 3 of them to be on the same team and have it be such a good team is a nice story. And I think from the human side of it, we talk about that. for Calle Jarnkrok, it's just a comfortable situation for him to come into, knowing a couple guys as well as he does there, and then obviously to be on a team that's going to, hopefully go on a long playoff run.
Yeah, first off, sorry, I said Jakob. It's Jacob Markstrom. 2, the party in Havla, Sweden. Not just just imagine them bringing the cup there. Everyone gets their day with it. There might be enough people where almost everyone could get a day with it, or at least like a moment with it, like the town square, wherever everyone gets to congregate there. The cup just right smack in the middle for everyone to just touch and look around. That would be fun. That would be a big sight to see.
It'll be there so long. They'll be like, all right, we've seen this. We get the idea. Other cup party here? Like, come on.
It's not every day you get to have the Stanley Cup in your home city, CJ.
Right, but 3 guys to have it? I mean, in all seriousness, they might spend 4 straight days there or something, 5 straight days, depending on how they split up the time if the Flames are to win.
That is true. Spoken like someone who's had the Stanley Cup in their living room.
Oh, yeah. I'm still glowing off of that. I went with it at Coburg a few weeks ago.
You lucky person. This show is brought to you by HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you can get farm fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip all those trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. It's exactly why it's America's #1 meal kit. It has fit and wholesome recipes for satisfying and nutritious meals that you can feel good about, with 6 recipes per week to choose from, including low-calorie and carb-conscious options. Again, just saving on those trips to the grocery store is a big plus. You can warm yourself from the inside out with limited-time recipes inspired by cozy classics from around the world, like beef tenderloin and cheese fondue, or miso, sesame, shrimp, and bacon ramen. They have a lot of good stuff from HelloFresh, which, again, saving on trips to go to the grocery store here. You should check out HelloFresh.com/Johnston16, and you can get up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. That sounds like a pretty good deal. HelloFresh.com/Johnston16. Gonna say that one last time here. HelloFresh.com/Johnston16 and use the code Johnston16 to get up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. That's from HelloFresh. For us to take an ad break here and talk about your balls. It's way more funny when Adam does these jokes. I don't know. Anyway, we're here to talk about the Ultra Premium Collection from Manscaped. You're going to take care of your balls. Yeah, nope, still not funny. Anyway, it's actually not for your private part, so I don't even know why I'm even really bringing up your balls. But anyway, it's a leveled up hygiene routine with your favorite manly scent. An all-in-one skin and hair care kit for the everyday man and covers you from head to toe. Literally. Manscaped is trusted below the waist. Now trust them with the rest. Join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off free shipping with the code Chris21. Also, you should write in the comment section that Chris should be doing some of these ads. But I'll tell you what, he's got some of these Manscaped products. I got some of these. Adam has some. I mean, of course, dude lives off Manscaped. Why do you think he has the nice, basement that he has with the studio? That's all Manscaped, baby. Chris21 is the promo code you got to use to take advantage of the the deal that they have. They'll take you 20% off, but also the Ultra Premium Collection, which will give you some stuff that'll help you groom yourself, and not just with your balls, above the waist too. Chris21 at manscaped.com for 20% off plus there shipping. I guess the next thing we can go to, because we've mentioned the Chiarot trade, we've mentioned the Calle Jarnkrok trade. There are obviously going to be more guys potentially on the move. So a mini trading pile, an emergency trading pile, and not as large as we've made it on the Monday show. One name I'm particularly intrigued about because he didn't play on Wednesday night. He kind of got the similar treatment that Ben Chiarot got earlier in the week before he got traded, which is to not play and be held out as a healthy scratch. And that's Mark Giordano, who was obviously a member right now of the Seattle Kraken, unless something has happened by the time you listen to this podcast. I'm curious what you think will happen to him.
Well, what's notable about it is they were honoring him for his 1,000th game.
Yes.
So it's not a game you're looking to sit the guy out. Now, the word from the team multiple sources of the team. It's just, it's just preventative. It's just maintenance. It wasn't a sign that anything's imminent. But I think it's clear with Chiarot moving that there's, that some of the same teams that would like a Ben Chiarot would be in on a Mark Giordano. Not the exact same player, but plays a similar position. And, there's only so much you can get on defense. I mean, there's still Hampus Lindholm. Now he's a different style player. Maybe John Klingberg, although Dallas doesn't seem inclined to trade him. Then you get in maybe the next tier of guys. But, it gets kind of, we'll see what happens with Jakob Chychrun. I'm sure you'll ask me about him during trading pile. But, there's only a few players. And so this is, pure asset management. And yes, it's not a surprise nor a secret that Mark Giordano will be traded by Monday's deadline. His situation is a little interesting with his cap hit. I would think that he's a player that's going to need to be traded through a third-party team, have double retention on the salary. And with that in mind, I think that, at this stage, it does seem as though that he's one of the fits that the Toronto Maple Leafs are looking at.
You said the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Right. Well, look, it's no mystery they're looking for defense. I think they're looking to change in some ways. We were talking earlier with Chiarot. I think they're looking to change maybe a little bit of the makeup of their blue line. The beauty with Giordano and is that, he played a long time and quite successfully with TJ Brody, who's a member of the Leafs. I'm not saying they necessarily reunite that pair where he brought in, but I think the option would be there. He's a competitive guy. And I think that's what the Leafs are looking for on their blue line. They do have puck movers. They have offensively skilled players. You have Morgan Riley there, Rasmus Sandin. It's pretty good in that department. I think that they'll be looking for not necessarily not in the Ben Chiarot style hard nose, but players that do play hard in terms of how they dig in. And so Giordano definitely is a fit and a potential for the Leafs. Not to say he'll go there because, one thing I believe that the Leafs are telling teams is they're not trading their first round pick, at least not for a rental. And so that could be, where this type of deal could get hung up, because I think if you're Seattle and you see the Chiarot return, you're saying, okay, we want something similar than that. Not the same player, again, older for Giordano and a little bit more complicated because he earns more money than Chiarot does. But I do think Seattle will try to get that first. I don't believe the Leafs will trade their first for a rental. I think if you see the Leafs trade a first round pick, it's because they're making a larger deal, maybe with a player with some term, more of a hockey type trade, we might call it, than just a pure deadline move. And so, that's kind of where I see that one on the precipice right now. But certainly he's someone the Leafs have had an eye on. There's talk of Carolina liking him. I don't necessarily see the fit as much with the Hurricanes. Remember that Ron Francis was their former GM. Didn't last long after Tom Dundon was taken over as the owner. So can't imagine he's too eager to do him any favors, but maybe if the best offer comes from the Hurricanes, that's where he ends up. Boston's in the market for a left shot D. There's other teams that fit here for Giordano, maybe even the Rangers. But if I had to say it, I would say that he's probably right at the top of the Leafs wish list here as we get to the weekend.
Okay. What about Claude Giroux, who we mentioned earlier? Two teams we keep bringing up are Colorado and Florida. Is there like a third team that might kind of swoop in at the last second and say, hey, we're interested in him too?
The only other team that I've heard out there in recent days is St. Louis. And, I don't know if that one makes sense totally. Like if you look at the Blues lines, there's not an obvious place for Giroux to fit. I mean, I understand he's a player that a lot of teams would just like as a player that conceptually could fit with the style they play. But, I'd be surprised if that ends up being the case. But that, other teams, I'm not hearing that from the Blues, but I'm hearing that from other teams. They think the Blues are there. But really, if we're being realistic, I think it will come down to Colorado and Florida. And, yeah, there's a trade package. Typically when you're talking about two teams down to it on a player, it's what can the Flyers do best with? But the truth is Claude Giroux really pulls the strings here by having a no-move clause and the ability to name where he goes and plays. And so, I think a lot of it rests with him. And as we're recording this, he's going later Thursday night into his 1000th game with the Flyers. My impression has been that that's really been where his focus has been. I think that's where the team's focus has been. I know he's got a number of family and friends down from Hearst, Ontario, home to our buddy Pierre LeBrun.
Hey.
But he's got a big big army of people in town to celebrate his 1,000th game with one franchise. So I think that's where his energy and mindset has been focused on. And then as soon as they get through that Thursday, I would expect that he'll get around to sort of sorting through his options, maybe having discussions with those teams, with the coaches or management, what have you, to see where the fit is and decide what's best for him and his family.
Okay. What about Jakob Chychrun?
Interesting case, right? He suffered an ankle injury last weekend. The team announced he'd be out 2 to 4 weeks. It sounds like Chychrun went this week for a second opinion, and it came back maybe a little bit more optimistic in terms of timeline. And he's going to try to skate again before the end of the weekend to see where he's at. I don't think the injury, certainly there's no thought the injury is so serious that it's going to take him right off the trade market, but it might back some teams off, especially those that are, seeing Jakob Chychrun's at multiple years on his deal. He's a young player. You're acquiring him not for the short term. You view him as someone who can be part of your team for a while here, but you might also be trying to be better for this year's playoffs. And so I think that those teams are going to need to see some of the what's going on with the medical report there before making that deal. But it still sounds like there's a chance he's dealt. I think it's become a little less likely because of that injury. Now, this is a reminder why you see Ben Chiarot, Mark Giordano held out of games. We'll see other guys no doubt held out of games as we get through the next few days here, because, if he was a rental, it might completely blow up the market on him. But, I think the Bruins are still a team to watch with Chychrun, as are the LA Kings. Both those teams have really been on him from the beginning. And, I still think that there's at least 80% odds, I'll call it, maybe 70% to be a little bit more conservative, that he's moved. But it became a little less certain just because of that health situation that's cropped up. But, the good news is it doesn't sound like it's that serious. He is going to try to skate. And I do know him and his agents and the team are willing to sort of work things through with any interested parties in terms of trying to ease their concerns about where he's at health-wise.
The next name on our list is Hampus Lindholm. What about him?
Big rental. I would have thought a month ago he was going to sign an extension in Anaheim. That hasn't happened. There really hasn't been much talk actually of late between the Ducks and his representative on a new contract. And so that points us in one direction only, that he'll follow Josh Manson out of town with the, Pat Verbeek, when he took over the Ducks job, said, if I'm not signing these guys, I'm not doing my job if I'm not getting assets for them. Like, he made it very clear he didn't want to have own rentals, as you might call them, even though the Ducks, they're within touch still of a playoff spot. It's clear the direction they're going. And so, Lindholm is someone, again, I think that he fits with some of the same teams I've mentioned on Giordano, just because he is a left shot D, whether it's Boston, perhaps Carolina jumps in and gets him. It's going to be a decent price on him. He plays a lot of minutes for Anaheim, but I think what'll be interesting, I guess, to see is does that deal happen as a pure rental, or is there an opportunity for the team trading for him, maybe to talk some extension and maybe ease their concerns about giving up a big package for him. I think that will be something to watch here in the coming days. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but it does seem as though his stint in Anaheim is coming to an end. Just that the Ducks were really wary with term. We saw Tomas Hertl at about the same age get an 8-year deal from San Jose. The Ducks were never willing to do something like an 8-year deal with Hampus Lindholm. And so, that ultimately, I think, is why that deal didn't get done, why he'll be traded out of town. And we might be talking about him again in July as one of the top free agents as well.
I would like your thoughts on Tomas Hertl and the 8-year extension he just signed with the San Jose Sharks, but not before I get your thoughts on Jacob Middleton to round out our mini trading pile.
Yeah, an interesting name, right? Jacob Middleton doesn't have a lot of profile around the NHL. Let's call it as it is. He's played, I believe, 56 NHL games, but he's someone who's generated a lot of interest, maybe even a surprising amount of interest for some. And there's a few reasons for that. He's really emerged. Played a lot with Erik Karlsson this season, and Karlsson's had a bounce back year when he's been healthy. Competitive type guy, and he makes $725,000 on the cap. And so, obviously when we talk about contenders, most of them, I could make the same comment that they have some cap challenges or they have to be aware of the ceiling because, they're up pressed against it. And I think he's someone that all of them could put in. I know a team like Tampa has checked in on Middleton. And, Tampa, if they make a trade, will have to be dollar in, dollar out. So if they bring on a $725,000 cap hit, they either have to trade something similar out or demote a player to the minors that makes that in that range in order to make the dollars fit. And so, Middleton is kind of emerged as, what I would almost say a funny candidate to be traded, again, just because he doesn't have a huge track record, but he's had his best season in the NHL. Should mention too, he actually could become what's called a Group 6 free agent if he doesn't play enough games before the end of the year. This is what happened with someone like Michael Bunting last year, for example. He became a UFA in Arizona because he didn't get enough games of NHL experience. It shouldn't be a problem with Middleton. I think he needs to play about 16 or 17 games, but it's something to watch. I mean, any team that acquires him, I believe, would do so with the intent to basically play him the rest of the season in their top 6 because, he needs to play those games. Otherwise, he becomes a UFA and can walk away for free in the summertime. So he's kind of a unique case because of his contractual status, what he makes against the cap, and the fact he's had such a good year. I should also mention, too, the Leafs are a team that's looked at him. I think Boston's been there. I mean, he's been a popular phone call for teams from the Atlantic Division to San Jose. And what the Sharks are asking for is a package similar to what Josh Manson got, a second-round pick plus another pick or prospect. So it's not a cheap price. I'm not sure if anyone will meet that price. That could determine what Middleton ultimately is moved or not. But the Sharks are in an interesting stage. They're not selling. They're certainly not buying. They're kind of retooling and I think trying to do what's best with each individual situation. And they feel if they can get that kind of price for Middleton that he's worth moving, even though he's still a pretty young guy.
For Jacob Middleton, of all people. Interesting. That's a lot I expected out of. I did not expect this much insight into Jacob Middleton.
Well, he's probably going to end up on a team trying to win a Stanley Cup, man. I mean, whether that's in Toronto or Tampa or somewhere similar. I mean, a lot of teams have checked in on him. I think Edmonton's looked at him too. Look, the cap is such a factor. Like I feel like a broken record sometimes having to repeat that over and over again, but you can't just invent cap space, right? I mean, you can say, hey, we need this, but there's not that many players that fit that make under this. And so Middleton, fits that box for a lot of these teams. And again, he's not just a pure rental. If you're able to trade for him and play him enough games, he's a restricted free agent. And so you retain his rights into next season. And obviously teams that like him now are going to like him even more next year. So, he's a bit of a unique asset that way. Whereas if you're trading for Mark Giordano, sure, you might extend him, but truth be told, you're viewing it more than likely if you make that deal as just a rental for the end of the season. And so, it's different types of assets. He's younger. And again, he plays hard. And, he's, most teams that are trying to win a cup feel like they need to fill a hole on D or to have more depth. And he would provide that for any of those teams.
All right. So with that out the way, let's get to Tomas Hertl and the 8-year, $8 million extension he just signed with San Jose. He would have been a name otherwise. He would have fit in the trading pile potentially, but he's off the market now and he'll be a San Jose Shark for the foreseeable future. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are it's not a bad contract. I mean, you look at what he's produced offensively. He's had a good year this year too. He's worthy of that money. It's just, you kind of wonder sometimes how the Sharks, managed to do this, plan to do this. They've already signed, you go back over the years, whether it's Logan Couture, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, Brent Burns, even Erik Karlsson. Like they've given a lot of big money, long-term deals out to players, starting at age 28 or 29 or 30 that carry on for a long time. And, let's call it a non-traditional way of building. They've had so much success in San Jose. I'll give them some benefit of the doubt, but it's a bit of a puzzling strategy, and you wonder what it does now. Timo Meier is going to need a new deal, I believe, after next season. And so can they afford to do this with him? It's a tough game to play, but again, the Sharks have their guys. They've shown a lot of loyalty to their players, which is to be commended. And ultimately, Hertl decided he wanted to be there. I mean, they offered him this deal. I think he could be pretty confident he'd get something similar to this money-wise had he been willing to become a free agent, had he been willing to be traded now. But he chose to stay in San Jose, and we'll see if they can build a good team still around those players making that money as they move to the sort of wrong end of their aging curves. But yeah, it takes a huge piece off the market. I think a number of teams, the Rangers, would have loved to get in on Hertl. So if you remove, soon Giroux will be traded, Hertl's gone. You're starting to see it's not if you're looking for impact forwards, there's not a ton there. Andrew Kopp will be one to watch in Winnipeg. We'll see if Vancouver ends up pulling the trigger on one of their guys. I think it's becoming less and less likely because the Canucks have manage to hang into that playoff race. It's going to take something monster to say probably JT Miller out of them. But, the Sharks had a pretty valuable asset here to trade, and they've instead chosen to keep him. And, everyone seems happy with the outcome.
Is there a name out there that people haven't really talked about that much that we kind of need to just keep an eye out for?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. A big name? Like, I don't.
Not even necessarily a big name, just like a name like, I mean, Jacob Middleton might have fit that bill, but he's kind of blown up in recent days.
Right. Or Calle Jarnkrok, I guess, in a sense, because there was a huge interest in him. There's a defenseman in Seattle, Carson Soucy, who's gotten a lot of attention, might fit the bill in that way. I think Seattle's of the mind, really, they're trading everything that isn't nailed down. That's not to say they're going to make 10 trades, but there's not a lot that's off limits when it comes to their team, especially with so many players on expiring contracts. So I think they're a team to watch here as we get into the coming days. I'm still curious. Everyone's talked about him. I'm curious what happens with Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah,
there's a bit of smoke and mirrors happening there. Does he want to be moved? Doesn't he? I'm not sure. Certainly, I understand if he doesn't just want to be moved to any old team, but would be fascinating to see him move to a team that we might consider a contender, or a team that could have a playoff run just because of who he is. My head's spinning a little bit, so I'm not coming up with probably the answer you're looking for a guy.
You've done enough.
But, it's there's a lot that flies around this time of year. And I still think it's going to be a busy weekend. I'm a little concerned about Monday, if I'm being honest, that we might still see, it's great. We might still see more moves Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but I'm not sure how much will be left to dine on Monday, but we'll call that James Duthie's problem on Trade Center for TSM.
And I'll tell you what, on Sunday, for us at least, I think we're going to be okay. I know we talked about some of our stuff potentially being dated. I think we're going to be okay. And I think we're going to have more than enough to talk about for our trade deadline primer coming on Sunday. So we have the podcast today, podcast Sunday, podcast Tuesday. So depending on how you view it, it's a 3-podcast week. I still think it's a 2-podcast week. I know you said it's a 3-podcast week because you consider Sunday at the end of the week, but still, we got y'all covered. We got you.
Show Gauntlet. We're relying on our listeners to maybe buckle in and listen a little bit more, because we're giving you more hashtag content this weekend.
Exactly. We've done 50 of these, and we appreciate you all hanging in for each of these episodes. People, it's Julian here with a message from Athletic Greens. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient and daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's not a fun time. In just one scoop in a cup of water every day, that's it. That's literally it. That's amazing. No need for a million different other pills and supplements and all that extra stuff. Athletic Greens is it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens will give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your very first purchase. All you have to do, visit athleticgreens.com/Johnston. It's CJ's last name. How easy? It doesn't get any easier than that. athleticgreens.com/Johnston to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. It's time for stick taps, buddy. Do you have a stick tap? Cool. I have one if you want me to go first and then let you think on it a little bit more.
I'm going to give my stick tap to NHL general managers, because we are relying on you. We are relying on you to get crazy this weekend and on Monday, make some big trades. I think it's good for the sport, while recognizing there's a human cost to it, or a human challenge. It gets people talking. I think it creates an interest, and we need you guys. So I'm giving you a preemptive stick tap, manifesting in the universe something good happening.
Yeah, I'm going to give mine to Claude Giroux, who will presumably play his 1,000th NHL game as a member of the Philadelphia Flyers later on Thursday. And if memory serves, I believe Flyers fans will be served, select ones anyway, will get some grilled cheeses That's going to be a big thing going on over there. So a lot to be happy for the Philadelphia Flyers, even if they're going through the rough season that they've been going through. But they at least get to celebrate a franchise player of theirs, a consummate professional in Claude Giroux, before he is inevitably shipped off to another team before Monday's trade deadline. So Claude Giroux playing 1,000 games in the NHL, that is no small feat, and he gets to do it all 1,000 games as a member of the Philadelphia Flyers. So a stick tap to a Hearst, Ontario native, Claude Giroux.
Oh man, you're just making me hungry hearing that grilled cheese thing.
I'm not even a big grilled cheese stan, but like I kind of want to know what they're working with in Philly with that.
And I love a good grilled cheese. And I don't know if I told you, I've been on a cleanse through the deadline. So I haven't been able to have anything like grilled cheese, or haven't had a glass of wine or anything like that. So we need the deadline to pass so that I can indulge a little bit again.
Bro, you need a steak.
No dairy, no sugar, no alcohol, no wheat.
Why? Why? Why?
I like deadlines in a weird way. Like I like the idea of like a 2-week period before, right up to the deadline, just to like reset and to be focused on this. Like for some reason it works well for my brain. Pierre LeBrun was doing a no alcohol. He did it for a month from February to the deadline. Although I don't know if I can tell on him, but he broke it last night. He broke it a little.
Oh,
25 days. So I'll give him like 3/4 marks or 80% on the test. That's still pretty good. But that kind of got my brain on it. And so, yeah, I'm not going to break it. I'm staying strong. And there will be a nice steak dinner with Pierre and I and whoever else wants to come after the deadline.
if I was in the city, I'd crash the dinner. But after what you just said, I hope your plans for that steak dinner are still on, because I don't know about snitching on the podcast. I'm not trying to do that.
Wow. I mean, he put it in the group chat. Like, I feel like if he throws that in the group chat, it's fair game. Like, I wasn't, it's not like every night I've been outside his window, like, hey, did Pierre break the here? Like, he called it on himself. So, like, he owned his stuff.
Okay. All right. Y'all are boys, so I'm going to let you guys do that.
I have a grilled cheese and a glass of wine right now.
Yes, I can understand that.
I'm just saying, like, in terms of where I'm at with this situation, I haven't been close to break on the alcohol, but I wouldn't mind a bit of bread and cheese or something. That would work okay.
Chris Johnston, a professional, disciplined, and probably not running on fumes yet, but definitely in the thick of things when it comes to NHL trade deadline coverage. You are appreciated, and I'm looking forward to you breaking more trades, so that way we have more things to talk about on the Chris Johnston Show, which, again, we will have an episode on Sunday and Tuesday. No episode on Monday. But we'll have an episode on Tuesday. So I kind of just talking aloud here now, I would presume for Ask CJ, we would probably move questions to Tuesday, because that would have been our Monday episode. We'll just kind of focus on more trade stuff on the Sunday. But or do we just still open it up to people anyway? Because people are probably going to want to ask about trades anyway.
I think we do both, because I'm going to solicit questions on Saturday, because I still have to write my column on Sunday. For Monday. And so I'll need some questions for that. Obviously, some of them will be dated. Maybe there's an opportunity to do both. Maybe we ask again before Tuesday's show to see, because, the deadline, typically so much happens. We might as well let the audience dry what they think is interesting, or what they want to know what happened. So maybe we'll have 2 mini Ask CJ segments in the next 2 shows.
How about an Ask CJ segment on the Sunday that is all about the deadline, all about trades, all about that, or just hockey stuff, and then Tuesday we put more fun questions in that one, because there are a lot of people who ask fun questions.
Sure. I mean, however we want to structure it, I'm up for any question. That's the spirit of Ask CJ. Is you can go weird, you can ask me about Teen Wolf stuff or whatever. I've been getting all kinds of shit lately, but then you can also ask what your favorite team's doing at the deadline, or why they made this move. I mean, I like it all, honestly. It's fun. Have
you watched The Batman yet?
No, I heard it's good though. Like, I've had multiple people tell me I've got to go see it. So I usually listen to people. Like, I don't make any secret of this. I'm not up on pop culture, but when something resonates enough that I'm hearing about it from everywhere, I usually like it. Like, I'm not resistant to pop culture. I just don't invest a lot of time and energy into it.
Okay. Well, we could find a way to sprinkle talk about the Batman when you eventually get to it. Maybe on the Tuesday, you could go like on a cheapy Tuesday, you just watch the movie then. Like maybe you could even do that before your steak dinner with Pierre.
Well, I don't think there'll be time Monday night, but it's funny. Like you're probably the same, Julian. Like I'm getting the odd friend saying, "Hey, we should get together, this or that." I'm just like, bug me next week. Like
Yes.
clear everything through Monday night, and then I'll everything I've been putting off starts getting done on Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. I didn't say Monday. Tuesday, you watch the movie on Cheapy Tuesday. Monday night, I don't think you should do that. But in all fairness, no, you're right. I think you said the steak dinner was Monday, not Tuesday anyway. So I can understand the confusion there. In any case, manage your schedule, buddy. Manage your time.
Like I'm ready. Like I'm pumped. That's the funny thing. Like you're like some guys are saying there's anxiety. Like I don't feel any anxiety. I'm just excited for these next few days.
Oh man, I am too. And we've got a lot to get through for Sunday and for Tuesday's episode. And of course, all the episodes after that. Start getting your questions in now for our 2 Ask CJ segments that are going to happen on Sunday and on Tuesday. You can tweet at Chris at Reporter Chris on Twitter for that as well. And if you are on the SDPN Discord, go to our questions sub channel where you can put in questions there. If you're not already on the SDPN Discord, sdpn.ca is where you should go to find the Discord link to join. For CJ, I'm Julian saying so long, and we will see you, or you can listen to us at the very least, on Sunday.
50 shows. Thanks for sticking with us.
The Chris Johnston Show. Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter at Reporter Chris. And follow Julian McKenzie at JK McKenzie.